This sitting is now resumed. Prior to the suspension for lunch, the Standing Finance Committee had been resolved, and the chairman was sitting. We shall revert to that.
We resume Standing Finance Committee, continuing with Head 80, Ministry of Transport, Works and Maintenance. It's not here. Half hour? We have half hour left with this particular head. The next speaker, I invite the Honourable Member for St. John to give his contribution.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was good to hear the PS mention Zors being part of the project in relation to the Scotland district, because the roads traveling from Foster Hall to Zors is like a Coney Island ride. It's been bad for more than 20 years. But my question to the ministers revolve around on the capital projects, electronic vehicle project, capitalized to the tune of $2.5 million. Can you just enlighten us in terms of what this particular project entails?
Thank you very much, Minister. So that is EVR is electronic vehicle registration, and essentially it's a bit of a security matter, so I'm not going to go a lot into it. But essentially, it is a way that the ministry can monitor cars on the road to see if they're up to date with their, be it the road tax for commercial vehicles or their insurance from the point of view of private vehicles. And it involves a microchip being on your vehicle and passing through various gateways. It is a technology used in Cayman quite extensively and used in other jurisdictions, but it is a way to monitor vehicles as they pass through various gateways. And it's currently going through a tender process. And I'll give you a simple example. You know, in some jurisdictions, if you break a traffic light, a picture of you will turn up and say you have to pay a fine. And that is basically what it will be. It will be to the point that if you are on the road without insurance, you will get a ticket. If you driving on Spring Garden Highway and you get from point A to point B faster than the speed limit allows, you will get a ticket. If you are on without the appropriate road tax to your particular vehicle, you will get a ticket. And it will all be done in an electronic fashion. And that is where we're moving towards in terms of that electronic vehicle registration process. And is that tender now? And the tender should come up very shortly.
Yeah, just two quick follow-up questions, Madam Chair. The sticker that is being placed on the back of the number plates, can you indicate how effective that is today?
All right. We're getting into some security issues. I really wouldn't want to. I apologize, Minister. I really don't want to give a lot on at the present time, but I'm very happy with the sticker program so far, and it is being rolled out quite effectively, and we look forward to seeing how it then impacts on the ability for the police to pick up who is driving on the road without insurance. But the two are related, so I didn't want to really get into that in this open forum at this time. Only from the point of view it's a security issue.
My question actually came from a constituent. He's looking to get involved in the business of manufacturing plates because there's really none in St. John. but I am told that there is now a registration process. Can you enlighten me so that I can, in turn, explain to him the rationale behind that?
Yeah, that is correct, that there is a registration process, and I'm going to ask the Chief Licensing Officer, Mr. Virgil Knight, to come and explain a little bit about that.
Good afternoon. Okay, the manufacturers of registration plates, they're asked to register as according to the amendments to the Road Traffic Act. There's an application form which is available currently at the Barbados Licensing Authority Pine, which the manufacturer is expected to complete. And then there's a fee of $500 for initial registration, and there will be a renewal fee annually, which should be $250.
Okay, thank you. Honourable Member for St. Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. Comrades, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues all. I want to raise two small issues, ma'am, and I will take the first one because to me it's more related, and I am extremely disturbed about it, and I want to find out what the Transport Authority intends to do about it. It is a source of distress in that I live in the area, so every minute there's somebody coming or calling and complaining. The taxi project, as was conceived and sold to us in the parish of St. Thomas for the Sturgis route, was one that we admired, and the people bought into it about 4 years ago. Unfortunately, it has been a terrible travesty for us. The results for me are limited, but the costs for the taxpayers were prohibitive. I want to find out what plans the Ministry of Transport has for us in the area. We had instances where buses were assigned to the parish, to the route, and then they will end up, when people get in the bus stand, they will end up going to take the people to Spikestown. They had decals, signage on them to say these are in the project, but they will rip them off, go to Spikestown at the peak time when people want to get home. And therefore, it has created quite some disturbances in the parish. I am hurting because Lion Castle, Highland, Welshman Hall, Bryans Road, Allen View, Sturgis, all of those communities have been left out of the loop as a result of what has happened with those persons who were assigned to the project who refused to go there. And if we know Lion Castle and Highland, those are two far-flung communities where it is very dark. The road is the worst that you could think about in a long time. And it is dangerous for the residents. Too many of the residents and my constituents are feeling it hard in the sense that they get to work late, they're being threatened about losing their work. Or at night when they come from working in the hotels and so on, they can't get a bus. Sometimes the $60 they pay a taxi, they did not even work for $60 that night. And therefore, it is creating quite some challenges. The sick, the infirm, the young, the old, the pregnant, they have to walk for nearly 2 miles when the bus puts them off at the post office. I am asking and pleading, please, to find out what plans the Transport Authority has for the project, because I've been communicating with them for more than 3 years. And unfortunately, nobody can give me a proper answer as to where it is going. I do not want, sir, ma'am, ladies and gentlemen, for any ZR to be playing the route, because when they come down Ashford Hill, they are like loose cannons. And therefore, I would rather have some more yellow buses being put on the route that are in workable conditions, because I'd like the Honourable Minister and his team to tell us what practices are there in place at the licensing authority and so on for buses to pass an inspection. Tires broke, brakes let go, all kinds of things happen with the buses. They are not roadworthy, but people are getting in them. And when the ZRs come, they're boarding them too. But what happens if there's a bad accident or any accident at all? What claims do these people have when those buses are off route? I need to get some answers, because it's an unfortunate experience for me, and I'm glad that they're reporting to me, because I don't take the buses in that way. but that is the only time that I would know. And then at 6 o'clock, no bus comes but a transport board bus, and there's only one per day in the parish now. And I understand the circumstances. There were 12 before, now we get one, but that one is more reliable than anything else. And until 6 o'clock, there's no other bus, and the residents in the parish are suffering in a terrible way. And I would want to know what plans there are, and for the Honourable Minister, if he can, to tell us, as a people, how much money was expended in the project, because it has to be millions of dollars when operators, not operators now, but the conductors will tear off tickets whether they had passengers or not. And I'm sure there had to be millions of dollars that could have brought in one of the electric buses that would have made a difference. I believe it's to the tune of that amount that would have been wasted in it. It was a poorly instituted project, but it was a brilliant idea the way that it was structured, but everything just fell apart and nobody conforms with any instructions anymore. And the only final one, ma'am, as I close, is associated with signage on our roads. The signage on the roads in Barbados is the worst. I have some that determine you have eaten out the signs, and we have a strong tourism environment in St. Thomas like anywhere else. And I'm asking and pleading for signage to be put back, for some rabbit eyes, if that is what you call it, to be put on the highway, because you cannot see those Jersey barriers with all the dirt and the dust and so. And there's a high percentage of incidents and accidents there. And the final aspect of it is to find out what plans the government has for using LED lighting, bulbs, whatever you call them, because on the stretch between Huddersfield and Warrens, there are about 40 lights that are not burning. And therefore, to traverse on that road, you have to be putting on brighter lights that would obstruct the passengers or drivers coming in the opposite direction. But I want to say that, yes, there are things that have been going well over the years, but the transportation component and the signage and the markings and the repaintings and so, that is a big problem. And I believe that is helping to contribute to a lot of the accidents and incidences of injury and so on our various roads across the island. And I would just want to get some answers, please, if they are available.
Thank you, Minister. So I heard about 3, maybe 4 questions. The first one will relate to the LED lighting. You would have heard the Government Electrical Department, the Director, Mr. Tyrone White, say that we have procured 200 LED lights, and we will be putting those lights in place very shortly. In addition, the Ministry of Energy we've entered into a contract, and I was there at the signing with the member for Christchurch East, and they have entered in a contract for provision for the ministry 3,000 LED lights for all of the highway. So we definitely will, of the 200, we have those ready to go, and those are being put in as we speak, between lamps and lamp posts as well. And the 3,000, once we get those, we will then institute changing over all the incandescent lamps on the highways, because we are only responsible for the highways. But I'm going to go further and remind people that 28,000 LED lights have also been procured for the Light and Power to change out all of the lights all across Barbados, not only the highways. And that will cut the electricity bill, well, you will see in the estimates, because this ministry also pays the electricity bill for the street lights. And there is normally in the vicinity of $7 million that we pay to the Light and Power. And we're looking to cut that to 3 million, I think it was 3.5 million in the estimates, because of the benefit of the LED lights. Whether all the LED lights will be put in time to realize that cut will be interesting to see. I don't think that all we put in at that time. But we're looking to get a benefit from that. I also have Mr. Alex Linton, the Director for the Transport Authority. He was there when the TASI project was instituted. And I would ask him to comment on the TASI project, and then I'll get the Chief Technical Officer to comment on the signage, similar to what she would have said, I imagine, to the member for St. George North. But I'll hear about the TASI project. Yes, Mr. Linton.
Yes, thank you, sir. Good afternoon to the Chair and to the members of Parliament. In regards to TASI, that was commenced in December 2015, and that ran for approximately 2 years. The cost associated with the operation of that project was just over $1 million, and it was to provide a reliable service on the 2 routes of Edie Village and Sturgis. We did achieve some measure of success, especially on the ED Village route. We did increase the reliability in the Sturgis. However, we had challenges relative to the maintenance of the units that was providing the service in Sturgis, and that in itself proved to be very challenging. The project was subsequently come to a conclusion June of 2018, and as a result of the closure of that project, we engaged a number of minibus units to play, especially on the Sturgis route, and they came on board. However, one of the challenges we found is that we standardized the route for Sturgis period, so that meant part of the route description included traversing the Lancaster, the Burns Road, and whatnot. However, the operators did not comply, and because of the lack of inspectors and being able to be on the road to monitor things 24/7, that's why we need to move technologically towards the use of GPS. It proved to be challenging for the residents in that area. I myself have traversed that area and talked to a couple of the residents to basically get the views on the ground and to see what we can do. And actually on my WhatsApp, I get regular updates on when a bus is not there, and I try to forward that to the operators who currently play and to the transport board so that we can try to address that there and then. Suffice to say that we have 2 projects looking to come on board to assist not only in the Sturgis area but to other areas of LAC. That is the TAP project, which the minister already alluded to. And we also are looking at the route rationalization project, which is a next measure we're looking to bring to bear, whereby we're going to do some reallocation of units from the overcrowded routes onto ones in need, basically demand equaling supply. So those are the 2 measures that will be coming to the fore. Those are the plans going forward. And in respect to the minibuses that play on the Sturgis route, Madam Ford, we are looking at trying to get more units to that location. We know that there are some road taxis that were interested. However, we will be moving towards the minibus variant for the volume that they will carry and the more safe passage that they offer and service. In regards to, well, basically that's it. The plans, as that I said, basically the TAP project and the route rationalization project that will be coming to the fore as soon as possible. Thank you.
Respond to the other 2 queries you have with respect to, I'll start with the reflectors on the highway to highlight the Jersey barrier. That's the concrete barrier in the middle of sections of the ABC highway. We did try a few months ago to put some strip reflectors on, and they worked well for the first few weeks or whatever, but then the constant dust and stuff like that, we are having a little challenge trying to keep them clean enough that they will be as reflective as when they first went in. But we are investigating 2 other things. There's another type of reflector that, shall we say, will be a little bit more self-cleaning. So we're going to try to order those, a few of those, and see if they work better. We also have the other reflective road studs that are actually on the road surface that we can put next to the base of the Jersey barrier. That would also help in that regard. We still have some of the reflectors in stock, but we have to purchase now the glue that goes along with that because the glue doesn't store as well as the reflectors. So we order the glue as we're about ready to use it. And with respect to the signage, we are restarting somewhat our signage program. We had a signage program going where, in conjunction with a private sector grouping and the Tourism Development Corporation also helped us along with that one. So a combination of the public resources as well as private sector coming together on that one. And we will be doing a range of signage, not just the direction signs I spoke about yesterday, but also the regulation signs, improving and reinstalling some regulation signs, those being like stop signs, give way signs, and stuff like that. So the signage is very much on our program, and every year we have 3 main depots that make the signs for us. We order the material in, like the sign blanks, as well as the reflective material that make the signs up, and 3 of our depots are responsible for doing those signs. So as money is received, we continue to make signs and install them.
Thank you. Honorable Leader of the Opposition, we have about 5 more minutes of questioning. Is it okay? Honorable Leader for St. Michael's, sorry, Honorable Member for St. Michael's South.
I think a bit of the question was addressed, but I had heard from some PSV operators, and a few PSV operators reside in my constituency. This is more for clarification. But if you had told me that initially they were told they had to all come back in and be reissued either a license or a number, I'm not sure, but I'm really just seeking clarification on the matter. And that they were concerned because there were a number of these PSV operators. I think Mr. Eswick is reported to have chaired this meeting. And they wanted to know, I want to know, and they're listening, so just to get some clarification on the matter, if indeed this is a case where they all now have to come back in. The person that spoke to me, Minister, said that they were concerned because traditionally, not under you, but traditionally, there's been a lot of inefficiency in even processing one number. How are you going to do about 6,000? And if indeed they were asked to come back in and have these numbers reissued, I would just like an update on that, and if indeed it is the case.
I'm not. Thank you, Minister. I'm not.
Mr. Eswick is here.
Huh?
Who chairs the Transport Authority?
Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Minister. The question, if I'm understanding it, is relative to the process that we are instituting, whereby all PSV operators, when I say PSV, I'm referring to the whole cadre of categories, H's, ZRs, Zs, ZMs, all of them, etc., need to come into the Transport Authority and renew their permits. Before, they would have gone to the Licensing Authority or BRA with the relative documents, clearance certificate, inspections certificate, things of that nature, and do that process there. What we are doing is instituting a process where we can do more due diligence and checks, because we found that a number of individuals would have just continued business and bypass the authority, so to speak, not being able for us to have that mandate executed of checking and making sure that they're doing the right things on the roads, that they don't have a discipline record that we need to observe and to ask further questioning and things of that nature. So what we have done is actually we've placed online our application forms, and they can fill out the application form online for renewals very shortly. They can also come to the office and do just that. And we are going to be sending out the necessary reminders in due course for that type of initiative. It is not to be burdensome, but however, we need to do the necessary checks and balances to make sure that, one, we are renewing permits that need to be renewed, just permits that is, and that we are going to maintain a safe system by checking the individuals who operate those permits, sir.
Obviously, but I just want to be sure that it's not going to lend itself to any unnecessarily long delays, because their concern was that traditionally it takes the Transport Authority very long to do simple things. I know this may make a simple process even more complicated. So while I support the principle of it, of course, I'm just making sure that it doesn't lend itself to inefficiencies.
Okay, we understand and appreciate that sentiment. Business facilitation is the government's role as well. That's what I was saying, we moved it online. That should speed up the process, that we're looking to endeavor to achieve those goals of safety, doing the necessary checks and balances. And we have actually basically gone online, as I said, with the application forms. So before, when they used to come in manually, now they're online, and we'll be able to process those things at a quicker pace. So we're moving forward with the use of technology, and with the necessary resources in place, we'll be able to do even greater, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Member for St. Andrew.
Mr. Minister, in the interest of time, I'll be brief. Prior to 1994, when the Barbados Labour Party came to office, a former member of Parliament for St. Joseph used to speak about two Barbadoses. And as a result, when the Barbados Labour Party came to office in 1994, the Barbados Labour Party government at the time did what we call redressing the imbalances. Redressing the imbalances, if you take the Ministry of Public Works as an example, there were certain areas where the delivery of certain services by government lagged far behind the rest of Barbados. And as a result, those imbalances were redressed, and then the question then of the delivery of the services to the rest of Barbados was considered. Now, there are a number of, speaking specifically to St. Andrew and the road infrastructure in St. Andrew, there are a number of problems which we encountered prior to the 24th of May, 2018, sorry, since this government took over. And I refer specifically to the road Rock Hall to Turners Hall, the road from the Rock Hall Road, the road in Orange Hill Main Road, and the Hopewell Road in Chalky Mount. Now, if you follow the process which we adopted in 1994, those imbalances were redressed before you dealt with more or less a division of the road stroke the length and breadth of Barbados. As I speak now, those roads are in the same state. Nothing has been done. In all cases, except the road in Orange Hill, there has been a partition of the road. I would want to find out from the ministry whether or not it is the intention of the ministry to allow those roads to be cordoned off like that with nothing being done. And with respect to the redressing of the imbalances, though the specific roads going back prior to 1994 when we came to office, they were addressed and they were included in the estimates. Nothing is in the estimates with respect to those roads. And by extension, look at the condition with respect to the bridges. St. Andrew has more bridges than any other constituency. St. Andrew and St. Joseph combined probably have more bridges than the rest of Barbados. There are certain bridges that we have not seen, not even an officer from the ministry in St. Andrew or St. Joseph. And there are certain bridges that were important links to the rest of St. Andrew. I can think in terms of the bridge from St. Simon's to Haggett's. I believe that you yourself toured that particular bridge. And then there was the bridge from, I think it is to the bottom of Rock Hall, Swans. And that was also an undertaking by the ministry. As a matter of fact, and during the last administration, they did temporary maintenance of that particular bridge. And since the 24th of May, 2018, nothing has been done. I would like to know whether or not the ministry has a priority with respect to the areas that I've mentioned. I would also like to know whether or not that policy with respect to redressing the imbalances is a part of the policy within the Ministry of Public Works. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Minister. We don't have a set policy, as far as I'm aware, about redressing imbalances. I would imagine when you were the Minister of Public Works, you did a lot of that yourself, redressing the imbalances in St. Andrew. I know many roads in St. Andrew that are pristine condition that were done when you were the Minister at the time, and I know you redressed a lot of those imbalances yourself. But certainly it is a point. We would have asked for people to submit roads, and you would have submitted the priorities that you had, and we have taken those. But of course, as I told the member for Christchurch East Central, a lot of it depends on the funds. And once we can get the funds, we're prepared to do the roads for you. But the bridges are a very important point, and it's part of a CDB program that we're under. And I've asked Mr. Scanterbury here, because he's part of that project, to talk about the bridges. And bridges is a very, very serious point, because the bridges have to be able to take the weight of lorries, have to be able to take the weight of the buses. The Barbados Light and Power wants to put some wind turbines up there. They have to be bridges that will take the weight of the wind turbines, being able to traverse those bridges and get to the various places that the Light and Power wants. So I'm going to ask Mrs. Canterbury to discuss the issue of the bridges, and then if I have to come back with the roads, I will. Mrs. Canterbury.
Madam Chair, committee members, good afternoon. I am the project manager for the Road and Bridge Improvement Study. There are 4 components, and the third component of that is actually the design only of 4 bridges in the Scotland district. These bridges are St. Simon's Bridge, the bridge at Bruce Vale. If you go a little further, try a path, and then there's another one in between there as well. St. Simon's Bridge. Those 4 bridges are in a state of disrepair, and in the case of St. Simon's Bridge, that is totally collapsed. Now, when we started the design and the procurement of the consultants, etc., the bridge at St. Simon's was still there, trucks, etc., were passing over it. But periodically, we inspect bridges, so we know these are the worst bridges. Now, all of those bridges, except the one at St. Simon's that is collapsed, are on the bus route. So you would get, I think it's St. Andrew's Church. I believe the minister for the area could help me. But that, if any of those bridges go, what will happen is that a major route, Shuri Village, thank you. If any bridge goes, that means that there really is going to be a big problem for the persons who live in the areas. So we are actually going from all up Sturgis right the way until you get to Shuri Village, etc. So currently, I have tender drawings on my desk. The Public Investment Unit is very desirous of getting this work done quickly because, as I said, those bridges are in a state of disrepair, and we do not want anything to happen. That is one of our greatest priorities right now. Right. We've also drafted, done a draft cabinet paper on it. I believe the minister could speak more to that. And our thinking right now is that because it will take very long to go to an international financial institution, an IFI, to get money, we would like to go to cabinet to get money from the consolidated fund to do it as quickly as possible.
No mention of nothing that you said in the estimates, but you are, at least you should be able, the minister should be able to give us a timeline as to when the people in these areas would be somewhere hopeful as to the repairs in these areas, especially saying that you yourself have mentioned the importance of those bridges. And what you are telling me now is something that I heard when the last administration was in power, and certainly we cannot come back here year after year and hear the same thing again. So, I mean, that is a question that I believe that the minister should be able to address, a little better, because the question of time is important.
Okay. Yeah. Obviously, how the ministry tends to operate is we need to get the approval of cabinet before we put things in the estimates. That's how we tend to operate. And as an occasional acting prime minister, you would not want me to put something in the estimates that didn't at first go through cabinet and have the approval of cabinet. So, right. So as soon as we can get that draft cabinet paper through, and the comment, right now we're waiting on comments from the Ministries of Finance, the Ministry of PI, the Public Investment Unit as well. Once we get those comments back, get that through, that paper through cabinet, then we look into source those funds and we actually want to get some funds to do some remedial measures first to strengthen up those bridges and then to do the final repairs going forward. But we have to go through the process, as you would appreciate.
Just one more as a follow-up. The road from Rock Hall to Turner's Hall, that was a very popular road with the rally drivers.
And it's shut down.
And there was a temporary road which was built to the east of that road. I believe that you did, your tour did not go so far, because I think that by the time we got there, I think you did mention that you were somewhat tired because we had you out in the field for the whole day. But there was a plan. There was a plan at the time to have a one-way going from Rock Hall to Turner's Hall, and then going the other way from Bordens to Turner's Hall, the road that is presently being used. But we have not seen any movement with respect to the repairs of the road to the west, the ones that the rally drivers used to use, and that was a very good road. I want to know whether or not there are any plans, if you're aware of any plans in the ministry to repair that road. I mean, and Mr. Minister, sometimes it is not very good. You have a difficult ministry, as we know, but sometimes you have to give certain policy guidelines to your technical officers. Otherwise, the technical officers will tell you what they want to hear and what you don't want to hear. Because we heard from the technical officers, because this is the information that maybe the former minister wanted to hear, that road cannot be repaired. It is a road that can and must be repaired. The road to the western side of, you don't necessarily have to answer it here, but I would urge you to make a check on that road. The road is to the west of the border to Turner Hall. Good, solid road, allowed to go into disrepair for the life of the last government. And I believe these are matters that you should look into. I'm not saying that you should ignore the views of the technical officers, but the views of the technical officers, while the views of the technical officers are technical and they're not political, they are influenced by the political directorate on occasions. Thank you.
Thank you for the statement, and all I can say is my technical people will certainly look into that road. I do remember the road that you're speaking about, and we'll get them to look at it.
We've now reached the end of the examination of the head. I'm offering the minister an opportunity to close.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Let me first thank the staff of the ministry and the two boards for coming out and giving all the support that they have over what has turned out to be essentially 2 days, because they were here yesterday for the 10 o'clock start, which obviously we did not actually call them in to do well till the afternoon, and I thank them for having that staying power and staying for the whole day yesterday till 7 o'clock the night, and then to be back here again from 10 o'clock essentially into the afternoon again. And I think that they've done a tremendous service, because this is a new format to Barbados and a new format to this Parliament, and I think that they certainly give a tremendous contribution to the work of the ministry and explain to the Honourable House what we do in the ministry. This ministry covers a lot of Barbados. It covers a lot of aspects, lots of topics, and has made a tremendous contribution to the life of almost, if not every Barbadian, also every visitor. And I want to also commend all of the members who asked various questions, and I'm sure that the ministry will take all of the various issues on board and go back to improve, because at the end of the day, nobody knows everything, and we all will get other ideas and information from other people, and it will redound to the people of Barbados on the whole. And that's what we want to do. But I don't want to come to a conclusion without also giving the minister in the ministry, Mr. Peter Phillips, the member, sorry, for St. Lucie, not calling names, an opportunity to say a few words as well, because without his assistance in the ministry, we would have extreme difficulty. The last administration did very little in this ministry for a long time. So we are now catching up, getting a lot of the work done, and without the minister in the ministry, for the member for St. Lucie, it would be very, very difficult, if not impossible. And I want him to also say a few words in closing.
Thank you, Minister. I join with you in thanking the members of the staff and the team for being here and they gave very, very good support to us as ministers, and we are very grateful for that. We recognize that the task ahead, this is one of the largest ministries, it is one of the toughest ministries, but we believe with our team and being led by Minister Duguid, and with my assistance, we will do our best to remedy the situations one by one, community by community, as we move through Barbados, because we touch every aspect. I'm not even going to say maybe. In every sphere you look around, the Ministry of Public Works is involved. We wish we were able to, we had the finances to deal with the roads. You heard the Deputy Chief Technical Officer said that we will need about 830-something million to fix the roads. Indeed, we don't have that, but with what we have and with what we will get, we will work to ensure that the road situation will not be the same, at least by the end of this first term, because it is essentially not, if it cannot be a 5-year plan. It cannot happen in 5 years, at least 10 years minimum, that we would need to make some dent in what is happening. In relation to the transport board, we have the woes being echoed from as far as St. Lucie right to Christchurch. Every single day we get messages coming from constituents across Barbados in relation to the transportation system, and we wish we had the money to deal with it. We know funds were spent badly, and we have to make that point. I'm going to make that point, that funds were spent badly in relation to bus repairs projects at places like Mangrove and so on, you know, under the last administration, and this has come now to haunt this administration. But we are not going to keep looking behind. We're looking forward, and we're pressing on, and we will do what we have to do to make life better for Barbadians. We recognize that people's jobs are threatened if you cannot get to work. Transportation in Barbados is system. It is not just about buses, but the system. That is why we will be having our transportation consultation in March to hear the views of all Barbadians and from all sectors as to how we can remedy, how we can do a lot better, how we can improve the situation in the system in Barbados. Say thank you.
Okay. Madam Chair, I do not beg, Madam Chair, that head 80 in the amount of $88,332,219 stand part.
Question is that head 80 in the amount of $88,332,219 stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. We think the ayes have it. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Head 31, Ministry of Innovation, Science, Smart Technology, in the amount of $9,895,131.
The Minister with responsibility for this head is not a member of this Finance Committee and is a member of the other place, and I seek your permission, Madam Chair, for her to join and to present.
Permission granted. The Minister of the Head is invited to make her opening remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair, honorable members. Before we get started on our head, I would like to introduce my colleagues from the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Smart Technology, MIST for short. To my left is the Permanent Secretary, Mr. Charlie Brown. To my right is the Director of the Data Processing Department, which we hope to rename sometime soon to Digital Services, Mr. Rodney Taylor. To his right is the Chief Telecommunications Officer, Mr. Clifford Bostick. Behind me, to my left, is the Acting Director of the Office of Public Sector Reform, Mr. Richard Durant. There is also the Director of the National Council for Science and Technology, Mr. Charles Cyrus. And there is also Ms. Alison Gittins, who is the Management Development Officer in the Office of Public Sector Reform, Ms. Paula Lane Williams, who is our Assistant Accountant. And there's also Mr. Hazley Strawn, who is an e-government development officer. The Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology comes before you as a new ministry. This is our very first year. I believe accountants might call this year zero for us. And it breaks new ground in pulling together a number of different departments and units from across government that had been scattered across government for years. The private sector, especially the information, communication and technology space here, the private sector in Barbados, has been clamoring for years, saying to government, we need for you to have a cohesive approach, and we need you to have more focused policy direction as it comes to information, communications, and technology and innovation in this country. And so the Prime Minister of Barbados's vision for a smart Barbados and for digital transformation, it's encapsulated in the mandate for this ministry. That mandate being to drive and facilitate the transformation of the public sector and also to create an enabling environment in which digital economy and digital citizenship can truly thrive. The departments that have been brought together for this, you have been introduced to, and I would repeat them because it's important for you to know who they are. Data processing, telecommunications, e-government, the Office of Private Sector Reform, and the National Council for Science and Technology. There are 7 strategic areas that we have identified as priorities for funding in this financial year. And I will go through all of them and then go back to each one of them, and share why it is important for this government to support this funding. Modernization and digitization is first priority. Cybersecurity, ease of doing business, integrated technology and infrastructure across government, innovation as it relates to civic and private sector engagement, the reskilling and reorganization of our ministry, and engaging and creating an enabling environment through legislation and policy. Now, while those are the 7 priorities for which we will be seeking funding, change management has to run throughout that entire process so that we can make change management often happens long before projects even start to bring about transformation. I would like to speak, Madam Chair, first of all, about modernization and digitization. The world has gone digital, and Barbados is still working in analog. We simply cannot compete globally when we continue to do things the way we used to do them, particularly when that way no longer serves us as a country, as our ambition, or for how we need to operate efficiently. And so the modernization and digitization of the public sector is a key part of this. When we talk about modernizing, what exactly is it that we're seeking to modernize? We're seeking to modernize processes. So we have to go, this ministry has process engineers, and we need to train a whole lot more, who will go across government, and in collaboration with the various ministries, departments, and agencies, they will deconstruct the processes that currently exist and seek to reconstruct them. Before we get to reconstruction, we have to determine, is this a process we want to keep in the first place? And once we decide to keep, what is the best way for us to reorganize this process so that it actually serves the citizens of Barbados? Rather than be more service-centered, we have to move to a more citizen-centered government. And so processes must be modernized. So too must be tools and technologies. Because we have much technology in government, but it does not serve us for the future. It may have served us in the past, and it perhaps marginally serves us now. But we now have to look towards retooling and putting technology in the public service that will take us into the future. We are also seeking of modernizing skills, reskilling and upskilling to future-proof Barbados's labor market. We are also thinking of modernizing the environment in which people work. And when we talk about digitizing, we are talking about digitizing records and services. We have a number of paper-based records across government, as you know, that's not only making us sick, but making us slow. And there are services. This government was elected to solve problems for people. And services are an important part of what people have complained about for years. And so that brings us to the second priority for which we will be seeking funding. Services for ease of doing business. A number of services have been identified. Some people have complained about the certificate of character, taking 6 or 7 weeks sometimes to get one. People have complained about the liquor license, taking a cumbersome process to get there. And there are other services about which people have complained, and they will form the priorities in the first phase of Barbados's move to make doing business with Barbados easier. 7 ministries and departments have been identified and agreed by the cabinet to be the first to be digitized and modernized. The reason being, we simply do not have the resources, nor is it wise for us to seek to do all at once. So we had to determine what the priorities will be. And if you'd permit, Madam Chair, I will itemize those departments for you. The Immigration Department, where people have complained about passports and visas and other concerns about having to wait too long and provide 300 different documents repeatedly to get the same thing. That's one of the problems that we're seeking to address. Registration Department, particularly the Civil Registry and the courts. The Police Department, International Business Division, Customs, Town and Country Planning Office, and the Barbados Licensing Authority. Those are the 7 MDAs that have been identified for the first phase of the modernization and digitization as it relates to ease of doing business. The third priority we are seeking funding for in these estimates, cybersecurity. Data is the lifeblood of any company or government, any economy that is digital. And it is important that we not only secure the data and digital assets of government, but that we also look after the privacy and protect the data of the people. Government's investment in cybersecurity is really about government's investment in risk management. And we have had many assessments done, and we know what we need to do, and we are getting busy seeking to make sure that we raise the level of cybersecurity in Barbados. And basically what that means for everyday people is that we are seeking to do the work up front to help reduce our vulnerability and minimize the incidence of people wantonly seeking to hack and thief your information and get access to things that they ought not to be getting access to. We want to be able to give Barbadians the confidence that they can go online and use the digital payments platform, which the Ministry of Finance is working on right now in collaboration with the rest of government and the private sector, and feel a level of confidence that this will work, it will be seamless, and that they can be fearless about things happening that shouldn't. Can we guarantee there will never, ever be an incident? Absolutely not. But what we can do is make sure we have done everything in our power, and therefore from a cybersecurity perspective, this ministry is proposing to spend money not only on cybersecurity as it relates to government's data, but also creating a national cybersecurity incident response team so that there is a process with the public and private sector collaborated that is in place should we ever have to face that unfortunate moment of an attack. We are also looking at cybersecurity as it relates to our telecommunications systems and infrastructure. And so cybersecurity is a huge part, a significant part of where we would like to spend any monies for which we're asking today in these estimates.
Honourable Member, you have about a minute left.
And so there are four other areas. One, strengthening the infrastructure. This is all of the, managing all of the websites and the emails and the servers and the network of government. We need to strengthen that capacity, and we also need to secure that. We also are seeking in these estimates monies for innovation, particularly as it relates to civil society and private sector participating. In the past, we are accustomed to going to government to solve a number of the problems that we have. We are now seeking to move towards a model of CivTech, to procure services where we put challenges out there to the public and say, here's something the government wants to solve, either in government or for government, and then inviting the private sector and civil society to participate. That is one part of that innovation that is a significant element in what we're seeking to fund. And then, of course, legislation and policy. That is going to be critical, because unless we create an enabling environment for Barbados to move towards a digital society, we really and truly leave ourselves exposed to things that we do not intend to happen. And therefore, there is a need for us to overhaul the Telecommunications Act and there is a need for us to put a number of different types of legislation in place that are more appropriate for us to operate in the kind of environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Leader of the Opposition, Honorable. 1 moment.
Head 31, stand part.
Question is that head 31 stand. Not yet. Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, ma'am. I welcome this afternoon Senator McConney from the other place to this place. Of course, she may not even have thought of it, but by your actions here now, you are constituting a historic first. In fact, around this place, one of several recent historic firsts. We have a historic first of a deputy clerk, historic first of a chairman of standing finance committee, and of course, historic first of our first female prime minister. One could quite easily conclude that women are taking over the place. I would submit that that's not such a bad thing. Well, just a few remarks, which I had prepared in advance, and Senator McConney has responded, in fact, already to some of those things. I welcome your team as well. Good afternoon to everybody. They say the smart culture construct is about the use of information and communications technology to enhance livability, workability, and sustainability. That's a change of culture. If that is true, and I subscribe to that view, then the establishment of this ministry is a significant undertaking, because to a large extent what therefore is expected of you and your team is that in a very significant way you change the culture or contribute to the change of culture in Barbados with respect to the way we do several important things. Already we've heard in this chamber over these last 2 days that we need to use the technology available to us to significantly impact in positive ways our traffic management. We heard that from the last ministry representatives here. Our public mobility, our communications, our utilities infrastructure, and operational aspects of that infrastructure. Our industry, our public service, education, we can go on and on and on. In fact, therefore, Madam Chair, we're talking about changing the way of life, the way we do things in Barbados in very, very significant ways. I look forward in your presentation, your responses to the queries this afternoon, to hear you speak, especially in the context of the figures entailed in the estimates as to how the ministry will impact several important aspects of the operational life, especially of the public service. We need operational efficiencies to a far greater level in the public service. We need to ensure there's a greater level of cost effectiveness relative to the way we do things, whether it is procurement or the provision of services. We need, as you mentioned, better business facilitation practices and higher levels of productivity. That has always been the case. We need a better interface in the culture, a better interface culture between the public service and the private sector. And I think you also alluded to that. And the one point I really wanted to make in my brief remarks at this opening point is that as we pursue all of this and as you lead us in this direction, I would hope that there would be, in fact, at the end of the day, a better platform for government, governance, something that we can meaningfully look to and describe as e-government in Barbados, and that would be an outcome which we realize in the context of the setting up of a very sophisticated architecture of security. And I think you alluded to that as well. So I thank you for coming, and I look forward to further interaction with you and the team.
We invite the honourable member for Christchurch East Central.
Thanks very much, Madam Chair. I certainly want to welcome the minister to the chamber, because certainly cabinet and the government is intent and fiercely intent really in modernizing all of government. And I know that this ministry has been pulled together specifically to lead that charge. And so, having said that, my specific question at this point is to the telecoms aspect, because for government to be able to modernize and deliver its services to the citizens, and certainly to the extent that we want to also use that as a catalyst for growth in the wider economy, I want to ask specifically as it relates to the provision of telecom services generally, not just to government, but certainly across the country. Why is it at the moment that we are seeing a level of service that certainly is not consistent with our need to modernize, not just government, but certainly with respect to getting Barbados to be at the top end with respect to where we want to be globally? And so I would like to hear from specifically the telecoms director, our chief telecoms officer, in terms of what is it that, certainly within the context of these estimates, but certainly what is the plan of the ministry to be able to make sure that the service with respect to telecoms and the provisions are consistent with what the government intends to have happen with respect to our modernization efforts.
Madam Chair, my name is Clifford Bostick. I am the Chief Telecommunications Officer acting in the Telecommunications Unit in the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Smart Technology.
Please pull the mic a little closer.
Yes.
Thanks.
I thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for asking the question of basically of quality of service. What we're speaking about is the customer experience while trying to connect to the various networks in Barbados. Also, the experience that the customer gets while on the network trying to do business online, or trying to have a conversation while stationary or moving around in a building at home or traveling on our highways. We have recognized that within the last few years, we have seen, let's say for example, if you were on the roads, in churches, in places where we have social activity, at work, and other places, of course, that customers are using their mobile devices. These are either tablets, computers, smartphones, not so smartphones, as well as other types of devices. Customers are also using these services while driving, and safely, that is safe driving, using either their radios to communicate or their Bluetooth devices to make sure that they can have a hands-free conversation. Barbados has been in the forefront of technology for a large number of years. If we go back to 2007 to 2016, Barbados was ranked number 3 in the Americas, Canada, and the Caribbean for ICTs and telecommunication services. What that meant was that ranking meant that, first of all, we had the services available to our customers and citizens and businesses within Barbados. And of course, if someone was connecting from overseas, you would be availed those services. It also meant that we were using these services, quite a bit. So, as I was saying just previously, a couple seconds ago, you see persons on these mobile devices constantly, and they're making calls and they're connecting. So what that means is that they're utilizing the services very well. And thirdly, it is about being able to repair, being able to support, from a technical point of view, ICTs and telecommunications. So Barbados has enjoyed a high ranking when it comes to ICTs and telecommunications. Now, you would know that there's something called demand and supply. The demand in ICTs and telecommunications is all about how much of this service, how long are our people spending on online services and how much time are they spending on voice calls. It brings a great impact to the network. From our perspective, it is unacceptable that if you're on a call or connected, that you lose the service after a short period of time, or you lose the service before you have completed the transaction, or you lose your voice service while you're moving from one place to another. From the operator's perspective, what they're seeing is that the networks reach maximum capacity, that is maximum utilization, very quickly after we get up from home and get to work. And it stays there for quite some time until we start to leave work and go home. So they're seeing that customers in Barbados are utilizing the networks quite frequently. Now, the problem with quality of service from our perspective in the telecoms unit is that there are a lot of metrics that one has to look at. The first thing you must realize is that in order to change or to correct a problem, you must have these metrics. You must have some way of measuring and baselining what you're seeing. So from April last year, we have collected the data from the three operators, from Ozone, Digicel, and Flow, and we're working with them collaboratively to see what the metrics are saying to us. Most of these metrics show that Barbados should be enjoying a fairly decent level of service. And remember, this is statistical data, and the data is collected over a period of a day, over a period of a week, and over a period of a month. The data has, of course, a baseline which starts from the lower end to the upper end. At the lower end is where customers are feeling the bad services. So pretty much, you don't get poor service every time. The poor service comes when customers are beginning to use the networks. So if you're using the networks in the wee hours of the morning, you will get a better type of service. If you're using it at peak hours, you're going to get poor services. Some of the customers are going to get poor services. We believe that we need to have a collaborative effort to solve this complex issue. There is a third element to this that bothers us, and this is because we have in our country devices that could be termed low-end devices. These are devices that could only make a phone call and probably send a SMS message. They cannot connect to the network to download or to view a website. And
we have about a minute left.
Right, sorry. And there are high-end devices that can do everything. What we have found is that we have 4 generations of equipment or services or networks in Barbados that spans from the 2nd generation mobile networks all the way up to long-term evolution networks. And because of that, you are going to get some degradation over the use of the network. We are proposing to the service providers that we sit together with them, the International Telecommunications Union, who has collected data and ranked Barbados pretty high, as well as independent auditors to analyze what's happening in our network, because we recognize that in order for government to grow and modernize, we need, first of all, quality of services that everyone can appreciate throughout the day, regardless of what time of day it is or the night, so that it stimulates growth, it stimulates the private sector using more online services with government, and it stimulates those persons in the diaspora who will be communicating back to Barbados so that we can have a better level of customer experience. So it's at the experience level that we're seeing the problem, but we have it in hand, and we're going to work collaboratively with those four types of persons.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, just to follow up very quickly. I think certainly it's good to hear you've collected some data, But the reality is that your specific unit has to, in my view, and certainly as we have articulated as a government, that we need to enhance our own operations internally for government. I know that the ministry has been brought together in this way to be able to deliver this. But I think that as quickly as we seek to digitize and modernize our files and have all of that put on a platform, which I know the other parts of the ministry certainly would be working on, I think fundamentally, unless the urgency is placed with respect to the provision of basic telecoms that supports the entire infrastructure, then it means that as much as we can modernize, we cannot deliver for the citizens in the way that we want to deliver if these services are not at the level, given that we want to be globally competitive and deliver any service just as good as Hong Kong, London, New York. It means that our telecoms providers have to be up to scratch. And I think that certainly your unit needs to assure the citizens, certainly to the members here, that certainly this is something that will receive the attention, because we are moving ahead. As your minister just indicated, there are 7 departments that we have agreed that need to be brought on stream as quickly as possible. We are working to digitize modernize our payment ecosystem, and it means then that at the underlying all of that is the provision of data services. I would appreciate a clearer exposition in terms of what is the path for the telecoms unit in that context, so that over the course of the next 12 months, citizens can feel confident that the regulatory framework is in place and that there's going to be greater communication with respect to what are some of these issues, but certainly what is the telecoms unit going to be focusing on over the next 12 months in this, certainly in this financial year, to make sure that government can actually, in effect, deliver on what we say we're going to deliver on.
Thank you, Minister. One of the things that my colleague just shared is the fact that this is a complex issue. And I will make it as simple, as straightforward as I can. We need to treat the telecommunications companies as partners with government as we move forward into building a digital economy. And that means that we have to agree on what are acceptable standards of service in order for us to move forward together as partners. Telecommunications companies are running a business, and they must see return on investment for whatever investment, additional investment they make in infrastructure. The people of Barbados want to see value for their money, that they can complete a phone call without it dropping out halfway on the highway, that there isn't fuzziness on the phone, or that when they call, there isn't a lag between when they place the call and when someone else picks it up. People are frustrated, and the people of Barbados are frustrated with good reason. I think what I have heard from the telecommunications companies is that they have made significant investments in Barbados's infrastructure. However, Barbados has a very small market. And for them to make additional infrastructure investments, they have to be able to see a return on investment. If not, it's not worth it for them. And that is as straight and as plain as I can put it. However, what do we do? The government of Barbados, as we are seeking to go digital, means that we're going to be consuming a different type of service. We're going to be consuming a whole lot of data, which tends to have better margins for some of the telecommunications companies. And once we can make the business proposition better for them, because we are stimulating demand through what the government is doing, we are able to put ourselves in a better position to have a conversation. That means that there is mutual benefit, not just to the government of Barbados and the people of Barbados, but also to the telecommunications companies. So that where the government won, we have to start seeking ways to stimulate demand that makes it also attractive for additional infrastructure investment. And as we do better as a government, we then attract other companies to Barbados that will help us to grow that demand, which then makes the business case for some of the telecommunications companies to invest more. Additionally, we are working with the region. There is a regional movement in the Caribbean for a single ICT space, a single space for information and communications technology. We are seeking to come to common standards, common policies, and be able to do better verification of standards across the region. And I think when we come together, it increases our ability to work as partners with the telecommunications company, because we're offering a bigger market, we're offering more opportunity, and the business proposition brings a mutual benefit to all. So first, it's having that conversation and collecting the data so that we're making evidence-based decisions. And my colleague from the telecommunications unit talked about the information. The conversation has started with the telecommunications companies in terms of what is it that we're seeking to do and how they will be able to work as partners with the government of Barbados to move forward. And then, of course, there is the regional effort that will seek to bring together the collective weight of the Caribbean as partners with the telecommunications company to improve services for all of us across the region as part of a single ICT space.
Thank you, Senator. Any follow-up? Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central.
Hello. Thank you, Minister, certainly for exposing the mandate of your ministry and certainly your officers for being here. Your presence here is an innovation, to say the least. I mean, this is breaking new ground. But I want to say thanks for your ministry. And I want to start by reflecting on page 22 of our manifesto, which speaks to, under the headline, Technology and Innovation, which speaks to the fact that there is going to be a youth award of $150,000 for that young person who's able to create something that can not only buttress this economy, but to catapult Barbados across the world. I am asking you, Minister, what is the plans? And the young persons of this country, as Minister of Youth, they're asking me to raise my red flag today and ask when our activities is going to be started in the schools so that we can have this plan and this promise to our young people, which has been trumpeted across the length and breadth of Barbados, so that their dreams can be realized and so that they can become part of innovative Barbados and the creative economy, because that is the one thing that must be able to carry this country forward, knowing full well that everything great in this world has been created by our young people. So I just want to know what is the plans thus far and how far east or west are we with that plan. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Minister. Well, I'm so happy that you raised this because working with youth is something that I also enjoy. But in terms of what the ministry is doing, just this past weekend, and I'll just give you an example of one initiative. Just this past weekend, this is on Saturday, we deployed digital ambassadors, young people, across communities north, south, east, and west in Barbados to support the citizens of Barbados in a hand-holding, practical way in resource centers where they needed to register for TAMIS. Register on the TAMIS for their TIN numbers. There were 90 digital ambassadors, young people, who came forward and said, we want to be trained, not just trained by TAMIS to be able to do what TAMIS needed done in terms of filling out your application to get your TIN number, but this ministry also worked with these young people to train them on how do you open a collaboration, a learning collaboration for people who want to raise their digital intelligence. We did training for them on how do you work with an adult versus a child when they're learning. We worked with them on how do you greet people, how do you treat people, how do you facilitate a coaching experience versus a teaching experience when people are fearful and learning for the first time? And so these digital ambassadors were trained, and this was our soft launch this weekend when we deployed them across Barbados. We have received evaluations from the public for the work that they did, and the evaluations are unbelievable. I wish that I could bring them to this honorable place and share them with you. But the bottom line is the response has been tremendous. And this was a collaboration with the Barbados Revenue Agency, the Ministry of Finance, and the MIST, where we have now deployed young people across Barbados as digital ambassadors. And every single time government rolls out another project that seeks to get the public to not only know about what government is doing, but to actually use it, the digital ambassadors will be deployed near home in communities to support them. And so this is part of us helping to raise the digital literacy of this country, make sure that the digital divide does not happen in a way that will then hamper what Barbados is seeking to achieve, and at the same time encourage volunteerism in our young people, where many of them are saying, this was such an exciting experience. And so that is not part of it. It is being able to have young people own the future and hold the hands of Barbados and say, allow us to lead, trust us as young people, and let us help you through. That's that part of it. There's also work that we're doing in the schools, and I will let the acting director of the National Council for Science and Technology, who will be working with the schools, share with the Minister and this Honorable House what we will be doing in the schools as well.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. My name is Charles Cyrus, Acting Director of the National Council for Science and Technology.
Mr. Cyrus, I know you well. You were one of my teachers at St. Michael. Welcome.
Thank you very much for that. Yes, we have made provisions for the inclusion of the Schools Innovation Award. It's a competition that that we will be running throughout the schools for the next financial year. So the allocation of $160,000 has been included in this year's estimates for the execution of that program. Right? So we will be working throughout the schools to encourage all secondary schools to participate in this program because we recognize that if the focus is on innovation, we have to start within the school system. We have to start as early as possible because we will not be able to get innovation in the adults if we do not start with the school system. So we recognize that it's important. It is part of the government's agenda to look at innovation in a holistic way. And yes, there will be a program geared towards schools in which the reward will be given not only to the students, but they would also be given to the teachers for the encouragement that they would give to the students. Thank you.
Honourable member, any follow-up? Okay, I now recognize the honourable member for Christchurch East.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to commend the minister who has dragged us kicking and screaming into this century. In particular, we are here today and we are, for the most part, referring to our devices to deal with the estimates. Previously, there was at least 10 pounds of paper next to each person who was in here, so Minister, I congratulate you fully.
Except for us, I still have 10 pounds of paper.
Minister, but let's not rest on our laurels. When I was in opposition, I had a particular grievance with the fact that the various departments in government were not interlinked or were not interrelated. So for example, while you could file your VAT return online, you couldn't make the payment online. And if VAT owed you a refund or you had a refund due for one aspect of government, you could not offset it against another aspect. So I want to know what is, I see something, sub-program 0087, which is shared services. So I actually want to know what is the plan for that and how quickly you expect to get there, because I would not like this time next year to be going to the licensing authority to renew my license and having to stand up in a line to pay and then come back to take a picture and then something else. So please tell us where you are with that and what are your plans where that's concerned, so we can have the same hope for that we have occasioned by the lack of 10 pounds of paper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am Rodney Taylor, the Director of the Data Processing Department in the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Smart Technology. And thank you, Honourable Minister, for the question. You'll see an allocation under utilities for just over $1 million. That is for the facilitation of continued connectivity between ministries and departments and agencies. For the last few years, we have been rolling out a wide area network across government that allows that facilitates the connectivity between ministries and enables the sharing of services, hence the shared services sub-program under the ministry. In addition to that, we now that we have the technical infrastructure in place, we have also implemented a data center that allows us to create servers and host infrastructure on behalf of ministries. We have over 30 ministries hosted within that data center, and we provide services for them on a daily basis, including the provision of email services. So most departments are on the official barbados.gov.bb domain that facilitates the sharing of information via email. We also have a host portal within that data center that is the point of convergence for all government websites. And we have, as part of our mandate, the elimination of the need for citizens to present information to government departments twice. So once you've provided your information to a single government department, one of our primary objectives is to facilitate the sharing of that information so that the citizen does not have to present the same documents issued by a government department to another government department to apply for services. So we are making some headway. Actually, even the facilitation of the estimates process on the same mobile devices, we've created a shared platform where those estimates were reviewed on a cloud-based platform that allowed members of the estimates committee to view those documents collectively, to comment, and so on. And the same facility is being used for cabinet. And we've spoken about historic occasions and firsts and so on. Also, the implementation of this platform has facilitated for the first time the meeting of cabinet via a digital platform. It allows members of cabinet to participate remotely if they're not able to be within the cabinet room. And so we are making strides, and I would just like to underscore that it is part of our core mandate and policy to facilitate the sharing of services across all government departments and to eliminate that frustration that you feel and many Barbadians feel when interacting with government and having to produce information more than once. Thank you.
Honourable Member for St. Michael's South. Yes, that's right, St. Michael's South.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My question is directly related to the estimates. If you follow at sub-program 7157, there is an amount of $2.6 million for professional services. If we go down to sub-program 0460, there is 1.025 for professional services. At 0049, there is 70,000 for professional services. At 087, there is 2.253 million for professional services. So my question, Minister, is what I suppose, given the quantum and the frequency and the size of your professional services vote, what you are going to be doing with those funds and exactly who is going to be employed to do what. Well, I should also say before you begin, Minister, I'm very, very happy to see you here. You know this.
Thank you very much, Minister, for that question. One of the important things that this ministry has to do is learn how to do things differently. And you see an increase in professional services across the board under all of our significant programs. The reason for that, Minister and honorable members, is because traditionally, government has gone to the data processing department or some other internal department to access services. One of the things this government said it will seek to stimulate growth. And we, therefore, will continue to get problems that need to be solved in government and for government being supported by the private sector and civil society. I shared earlier that CivTech is a significant initiative that we will be taking, where we throw challenges out there and we ask the private sector and we ask civil society to provide us with the solution rather than necessarily going inside of government and finding that solution there. So that is some of what we will be doing in terms of engaging citizens and the private sector in solving problems within government and providing solutions that we have traditionally gone to government to do. And so that will, through the proper procurement processes, enable us to be able to stimulate some level of growth. Another thing that we are going to do is we are going to be working with our legislation in a significant way, and we are going to be needing to engage consultants in very specific and focused way and with discipline where there is performance that is expected to be able to support our ministry in performing what we would normally have to do internally. This ministry is likely to be very lean, it is going to be flexible, and it is going to be able to be fast. And that means that we have to continue to do things differently using professional services. And I'm going to ask the Permanent Secretary, Mr. Charlie Brown, to also speak to the additional services that will come from this head.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Yes, in addition to that, the ministry is about to embark on a public sector modernization program, which will see improvements in efficiency and service delivery in the public service. This project will be funded, hopefully under the IADB, and it has two major components. Component one deals with the design and implementation of an updated digital strategy, because you need a roadmap as you go forward. It will also have as a component the implementation of online services for businesses and citizens. That's critical. Right now, as it is, there aren't many services online that government, that persons, the businesses, as well as citizens can interact with government. So one of the objectives of this component is to provide these services online. Another major activity is the implementation of an electronic document and records management system for the entire public service. Generally speaking, the systems right now are paper-based, and we're going to take it into the digital world with the implementation of the electronic document records management system. And the final component, under component one, is the digitization of records. That is the information base that will be used to leverage to use the implementation of the electronic document and records management tool. There's also a component two, which deals with modernization of the human resource management function. That would comprise the development of a human resource information management strategy, as well as the implementation of a human resource system for the public service. So you see it as a very monumental project that we are about to embark on that will see improvement in the way we do business in the public service. Thank you.
Senator, you have a comment?
Can I add? Yes. If we still have time in our 5 minutes, I'd simply like to add, we have a list of services also to speak more specifically to some of the professional services. We will be using some of those professional services money for mobile device management, for website and portal development, for application development, for help desk management, for security operations center, for certain penetration testing that we will have to do on our systems, for awareness campaigns, for vulnerability assessments that we will need to do, for continuous cybersecurity training, for the cyber incidents response team, for employee assistance program. And so we have a list of the services, and these are just a few that will be a part of that professional services payments, estimates request.
Thank you. Honourable Member for St. Peter.
I wanted to ask a question in relation to shared services. I'm looking at the sub-program statement. This is 0087, and it speaks to a single electronic gateway to government information and services in order to facilitate easier interaction of citizens with government. And while I don't have more details than that in front of me, I recall hearing at some point about ID cards that were supposed to be bits of equipment that would allow for the pulling together of a person's information, a citizen's information, or a resident's information from across various government departments. And I'm wondering where we are. I seem to remember hearing at some point that we did have, or that we do have those cards, and I just want to find out the status of the cards, how close we are to having it introduced and bring us, as the Honourable Member for Christchurch East said, into the 21st century.
Thank you, Minister. About 7 years ago or so, the Barbados government of the time would have invested in 500,000 ID cards. They were multi-purpose cards that were to be used to re-register the population and also to have additional functions of being used for national insurance and to pay bus fares, etc. That government, the last government would have bought those cards and they would have sat in storage for all of these years unused. Just this year, the ministry had those cards sent for forensic testing, and the ministry also spoke with the manufacturers of the silicon chips that are in those cards. And unfortunately, the manufacturers of the chip have now informed Barbados that with those cards having sat in storage for so many years, they cannot guarantee their performance at this time. We were also told that the chips are no longer being manufactured, and therefore, should Barbados choose to proceed and use those cards, they will not be providing any technical support should there be a malfunction. I had asked for the exact numbers to be in front of me right now, and I'm going to ask one of my officers to get the statistics. But about $4 million in the cards, Barbados will now have to forfeit. The taxpayers have paid for those, and we will now not be able to use those. And that project had two pieces. It had about $4 million. at a time when Barbados can ill afford to be losing that kind of money, when the taxpayers of Barbados are crying out. And we now cannot use that investment that was made by the last government. There were two parts to that. There were the cards themselves, the physical multipurpose cards, and then there was a database system. At the time the data was being used, I believe it might have been on Microsoft Access. And we were able then to find a more robust civic database that can be used, and at that time, that database was put in place. Thankfully, Barbados can still use that database, and that was to the value of about $2.5 million. And so out of a close to $7 million investment, we will be able to save less than half. But Barbados will continue to move forward with a digital ID, because now technology has leapfrogged, has gone past that capability. And we know that Barbados can now still implement a national ID, but with the advanced technology that will cause us not only to have digital IDs now, but mobile IDs, where you can use your cell phones for ID purposes and to pay and to do business with government using your ID that is managed through a central authority. I do not want to get into the technical aspects of it, but just recently, the Cabinet of Barbados would have agreed that we can move forward with the new digital ID, understanding that we have to put aside those old cards, but we can get new cards that now takes us into the future.
A follow-up question, and I'm glad you spoke a little longer after saying that we wasted $4.5 million, because I really had to compose myself. I started to think about the roads in Fort Hill and Indian Ground.
Wrong head, Minister, but good try.
Just thinking what was going through my head when I heard the $4.5 million.
Okay.
But Madam Chair, just allow me to compose myself, because I need to ask a follow-up question.
Go ahead, I understand.
I'm using those words just to help me to compose myself, not introducing a new head. Now that I feel sufficiently composed, the digital ID and the use of technology, shared services, the use of technology by ordinary citizens. There's another head that speaks to, I think this is 0436, public sector reform. So I'm making a connection between these two heads. Sub-program, sorry. Having citizens use the electronic capability that government will put in place, that should have been put in place 6 or 7 years ago, I'm thinking will call for significant training and orientation for people, for the ordinary people. I'm speaking about people not just in Indian Ground, Fort Hill, who need the roads, but the alley, all over St. Peter and in other constituencies, people who are, I think, intuitively scared of launching out, touching buttons and using cell phones. As a matter of fact, they're even scared of, in some cases, having some card that has all of the information on it. True. My question, as it relates to public sector reform and the shared services sub-programs, because public sector reform, I assume, speaks to public sector in particular. My question has to takes in public sector and all the rest of society. How is your ministry going to be using the funds allocated both for public sector reform and maybe under shared services to educate, to orient the people, so that as you change technology, as you improve technology, that the people are brought along and they're comfortable with using the technology, so that there is the buy-in and people, are happy to use it and can make full use of it? How are you and how is your team planning to execute that sensitization and education program?
Thank you, Minister. You have hit the nail on the head, where you recognize that we cannot simply put technology out there. It is really not technology change. It is really change management, and people have to be at the center. The technology comes last, after we have done many things. And that is why many people have said, well, you haven't started doing X yet. The change management starts before the project itself, the change project itself. And first we have to build awareness of the need to change. Then we have to build the desire of the people who are involved in the change to support. Then we have to make sure that they know how to change. Then we need to make sure that they have the ability, meaning the skills and the behavior that will make the change happen. Then we have to reinforce the change to make it stick. And so when you're talking about that transformation process, it is indeed a process that is about awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. And so the programs that we are seeking to put in place for change management through the Office of Public Sector Reform will take each of these into consideration. We understand that Barbadians and the public sector will be able to change ourselves, but we also may very well need in the same professional services to seek to get change management specialists, because in the government currently, we do not have the full skill set to do this all ourselves. And therefore, the issue of reskilling and upskilling to be able to take on this change management process has to be an important part of it. And it is not just the permanent secretaries and the heads of departments, but we have to move that entire set of training and awareness and orientation throughout the entire public service. And so that is our approach, using what is considered the ADCAR, transformational change approach, which is what I described earlier, and being able to move that straight across government using both internal and external resources to bring it about. I will turn over to the head of the Data Processing Department to speak to the shared services piece.
Thank you very much, Minister. The shared services specifically focuses on the technological infrastructure to support the government's digital agenda. The change management and communication portion falls under the subprogram 0436, Public Sector Reform. That's where a lot of the change management, the business process reengineering that will precede the implementation of IT systems will happen. We're also working under the National Council on Science and Technology as part of our Digital Ambassadors Program, where before we introduce the technology so that citizens, we can raise the level of digital intelligence. We're aware, for example, in some of our in Caribbean countries where there have been efforts to introduce digital or multipurpose ID cards, the concerns raised by the public in terms of the confidentiality of the data. And so we are very cognizant that data protection legislation must be introduced to safeguard how departments capture and handle and access that data. So we have that as part of our legislative agenda as a priority. And that is at the moment being reviewed by the Chief Parliamentary Council. So we are aware that the change has to happen in terms of the culture, of the way that people interact with technology, and we are mindful of it, and it's being dealt with under the Office of Public Sector Reform. Shared services, as I mentioned, focuses on the infrastructure part of it, but we are one of the reasons for the rationalization of the ministry by bringing the Public Sector Reform Agency into the ministry was to handle that specific aspect. So we are aware that it is not just all about the technology, but also it's about changing a culture and a mindset.
So my final follow-up question. I think I heard you, Minister, to say that the Barbados does not have all these skills that will be needed to do everything that we need to do and that we will have to import skills. I'm not sure if you were probably answering an unasked question from the Leader of the Opposition, who sometimes doesn't always understand that we need to import skills and that once we import them, we have to pay for them. But in that vein, I want to ask, but he's my friend. You know, we have this saying in Barbados, asking for a friend. So I was asking for my friend. I want to ask, my final question would be, are there any best practice places, people, where this modernization has taken place that we could use as, you know, examples? Also, and I'm asking in this public forum because those who may be listening or watching may want to Google it themselves to see some of the places where this kind of modernization has been successfully done. So my question is, are there any examples that Barbadians generally, that you as a minister and the ministry could be following, and that Barbadians generally could check so that the ordinary person has a sense of what other people are doing?
Thank you, Minister, for that question. Estonia is recognized world around as one of the leaders. Singapore is recognized world over. Scotland has also done significant work in this area. And in fact, Barbados has had, along with the rest of the Caribbean, a number of Caribbean countries, I believe there were 6 or 7 of us, have had study tours to Estonia, and we have others in the Caribbean have had study tours to Singapore as well, so that we are looking at best practices and seeing how we can not only match, but perhaps even better those practices. And Barbados recognizes that we cannot do everything on our own, and therefore there is currently some discussion with Estonia with regards to the possibility of technical cooperation with Barbados, and the rest of the region, the Caribbean region, is also seeking to move as one as we seek to get the kind of support that we need so that our systems are interoperable. They're operating and talking to each other in a way that allows the Caribbean to be a force in this new digital world.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam. And that Leader of the Opposition does understand the need sometimes to import skills. What the Leader of the Opposition does not understand is the need to import skills when the skills are already available to us in the public service, which is a larger problem, which my honorable friend from St. Peter will soon come to realize. However, having gone past that, my question actually has been precisely posed by the honorable member from St. Michael South. I want to repeat the question, if only for the reason of having it written into the record. Though he captured the gist of what I will ask in his own question, he would not have expressed it with the tone that usually accompanies a question that comes from the opposition. And that may simply be because he's not yet fully a spokesman for the opposition. But question is this. The sum of $9.7 million has been allocated to this ministry. That's what's being requested in these estimates before us, $9.7 million of non-statutory support. The ministry is proposing for professional services and consultancy fees $4.3 million. That's 44%. Yes, ma'am. The sum of $9.7 million is allocated to this ministry. The ministry is requesting $4.3 million for professional services consultancy fees. That's about 44% of the budget being requested. And then there's another $629,000 being requested for non-statutory staff payments. That makes about $5 million out of $9 million as a budget, not including statutory staff payments. I would want to invite the minister to say something that justifies this, that rationalizes this for me and others who might be paying attention. And then I have one follow-up, which in fact has been addressed already as well, but I want that in the record too.
Senator?
I want to thank the opposition leader for the question. With respect to the non-statutory expenditure, certainly under 0087 shared services, for example, under professional services, this includes the facilitation of a secondary data center. We realized in June 2018 the need to provision a secondary data center to, so that we eliminate the single point of failure with respect to government's data. And so we provisioned a secondary data center. And the options before us were to build a facility, which would be quite expensive if it is built to international specification, or we could also seek to have this provided through professional services as a managed service facility by a private sector company that had such a facility available. And so a big portion of the expenditure under the ministry, certainly under shared services and under the data processing department, would be the facilitation of a secondary data center that backs up government, and this is part of our business continuity plan. In addition, we saw the devastation within the region in 2017 with respect to hurricanes and natural disasters, and so we also sought the approval of cabinet to host data overseas. And we have an off-island site that allows us, in the event of an island-wide disaster, to recover the government's data and allowed for the continuation of the delivery of digital services on behalf of the government of Barbados. You would appreciate that even in terms of owning an overseas facility of that level, a Tier 3 data center built to international standards, again a multi-million-dollar facility, it would be more feasible for government to pay for those services so that we don't have the responsibility to manage and operate that facility on a 24/7 and secure it on a 24/7 basis. So a great portion of it is attributed to that. In addition, I spoke about the deployment of a wide area network. That represents well over $1 million under shared services. That pays for the consolidated telecommunications within government. So while it is consolidated here under this ministry, it effectively facilitates communication for the entire public service. So whereas before individual ministries were paying different prices to different telecoms providers, this has consolidated those telecommunications costs within the ministry under shared services, and actually has led to savings overall within government, because we're able then to realize economies of scale and to enhance the communications across government. So that's a great portion of it under the ministry. And the PS.
And if I may continue, I see that there's a quizzical look on the face of the leader of the opposition. Right. That is best practice. Certainly in terms of making sure, Barbados happens to be an island that is also susceptible to natural disasters. And one of the responsibilities when it comes to securing and protecting the data of this country is to make sure that in the unfortunate and, God forbid, event that there should be a hit on Barbados, we do not lose all of government's data, and that is the reason why we have not just a backup center for our data in Barbados, but we have an offshore place where we can secure So it's risk management at its best in the event of a disaster. Additionally, some of those professional services, we talked about putting government services online. You need to put it on a platform. You need to put it on something. You don't just put it into space. And so some of that money will be used to provide an e-services platform that is scalable. So every time we put on a new service, we do not have to look for a different type of platform, but it goes on the same platform and it creates economies of scale. And so we're actually saving money in spending this money in this additional way.
My quizzical look, Madam Minister, had not so much to do with the fact that you have off-island storage of Barbados government information, but that we did not know, or that I did not know, and I do not know who else in this chamber would have known that. And I think that, I think that that's an important consideration, that we knew that, and that we knew where, in fact, this information is stored. Beyond that, Madam Chair, the Permanent Secretary, in responding to the member for St. Michael South, spoke to my related concern. It has to do with the IDB support for your program for digitization, the public service, e-services platform, electronic documents management system, etc. I was going to ask for the minister and her team perhaps to give me a sense of how they see this being rolled out, but much of that has been addressed in her earlier remarks and subsequent remarks. What I will want to ask, though, is how do you see the play out between the emerging e-governance culture in the public service and the traditional labor-intensive public service culture in Barbados? There obviously will be tensions. Some would suggest we are talking about improvement, modernization, and the necessary tech culture that we need to embrace. But there are others who will see displacement of workers. And I just wanted to hear a perspective from the ministry on that.
The intention of this ministry is not to displace workers, but to give workers superpowers. Technology will be used to automate those processes that are repetitive and that have low value, and that can easily be automated to improve efficiencies. Then we can use those workers for higher value type work. So for example, we were talking just recently where you had someone who was responsible for putting in people's data, their names and addresses, etc. Now, that person could continue to do that, or that process can be automated by people being able to complete that application form online, but then that same person moves towards quality management, quality assurance. Then you have to go back and you have to check the data and make sure that there's accuracy, etc., so that that person is not used for that repetitive, easy, simple task that can be automated, but they're being used for higher value tasks. One of the things in this government is we are not looking to displace people. We are looking to use them and have them be engaged in more interesting, high-value work that they enjoy. I'll let the Permanent Secretary speak to the rest of your question.
Thank you, Minister. I support our view in that all this modernization program would change the way things are done in the public service. The current state is that the processes are manual and paper-based. In the new environment that we created, it will be an electronic world. So the old jobs would no longer be in vogue. New positions will be created, positions will be enhanced. My position is that persons won't be displaced, they'll just be reassigned to do additional tasks that would assist in improving the efficient function in the public service, including delivery of services. You might have a clerk before pushing paper, but now you have somebody actually working online, using their tablets, using their smart devices, interacting with customers, overall enhancing the delivery of service. So I wouldn't really focus on the fact that jobs will be lost, jobs will be enhanced. And it's a journey. It is, when we go in, we analyzing processes and systems, we normally engage people. So as part of the whole change management process, communication is part of it. Once persons understand what the overall benefit, not only to the organization and to the country, people would embrace what's happening. So communication, change management.
Madam Chair, if you would permit me simply to, I wouldn't want to go into record any misunderstanding about the public knowing or not knowing about data center. In April of 2018, which would have been before this government was in place, there was a cabinet decision made by the then government with regards to the offshore facility for data processing and for the data center, and I would hope that at that time that government would have informed the public when they made that decision. Additionally, if I would address myself then to the professional services, another part of that will be the Smart City Initiative, which is a part of the Barbados Labour Party manifesto. The Smart City is going to be coming on stream within the next few months, in fact, and it will involve in the first phase 3 aspects. And I will, in fact, allow the head of data processing department to speak on Smart City because he will be charged with taking care of that, and that will also come from those funds that the Leader of the Opposition asked about.
Thank you, Minister. I'll be brief. The Smart City Initiative, as the Minister pointed out, is a key commitment of the government. It is the provision of free public Wi-Fi within Bridgetown, and it is seen as a precursor to a smart nation where this Wi-Fi is available across the country. We see that this will facilitate communication and promote innovation across Barbados. That is one component of the Smart City. In addition, it includes the provision of one key service, which is the smart parking, which would allow Barbadians to identify parking spaces within Bridgetown through a mobile application and be able to book and pay that parking space via that same mobile application. We've done this in collaboration with the Chamber of Commerce, with a number of stakeholders as well, which including the Royal Barbados Police Force, recognizing that parking within Bridgetown can be a challenge sometimes, and so that smart parking would facilitate the easy access in and out of Bridgetown. In addition, we're working with the Ministry of Tourism to facilitate a mobile application to enhance the tourism experience, the experience of tourists, and we hope to entice them off of the cruise ships with this free Wi-Fi, which would promote the places of interest within Bridgetown, allow them to have self-guided tours using, at the back end, applications like Google Maps and Waze, that would allow them also to interact with the environment as they pass Parliament. They understand the history of it. They know that there may be some events happening in Bridgetown and places where they converge. That network would also allow us to capture data as people traverse Bridgetown, and that will provide information on where people congregate, the places that they visit, and the traffic within Bridgetown. That platform will also allow us to roll out other smart services in terms of traffic management, security, environmental management, disaster management, and so it's a precursor, a very important project that will be a precursor to a smart nation. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Member for St. James South. Mike.
I'm not sure if I'm getting any juice. I am now? Okay, here we go. Okay, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I want to congratulate the Minister and her team this is a bold, big initiative that can transform Barbados, transform citizens' lives, make our lives more efficient, easier, less stressful. And the success of it really depends on excellence in implementation. So I was very pleased to hear the officer in charge of public sector reform speak about the necessary effort that will be put in place in relation to the issue of change management and the management of that process of helping people to make the change so that this technology can do Barbados good. I want to admonish, however, that there's something we need to bear in mind in doing change management in the Caribbean. The Caribbean is a relationship culture, and therefore, when you are doing change management, it is necessary that you address the underlying psychocultural behaviors which impact the way in which we work, the way in which we do team, the way in which we do service. One of the questions I want to ask, I believe the minister started speaking about it when she was talking about the change management. She said it had about 4 components. And one of the components was about making the change stick. Because all of us, if you've been in business, you do training, everybody's excited for 4 weeks, and then it fades. But this investment is too critical to our future to allow that to happen. So I want to know, when you are putting in place this program, what specific measures are you going to put in place, one, to help monitor people's productivity? Because I heard the ministries you've heard so far are doing so many things, but the project management, the management of people doing things to time, I believe technology can help us do the monitoring of the performance of our teams so that we deliver as close to time as possible and deliver the results that we are looking for. How does the ministry plan to address the measuring and monitoring of people's performance and the project management so we can guarantee results?
Madam Chair, in response to the question from the honorable member, part of the modernization program has a component being monitoring and evaluation. What will be done over time is that we would have certain performance indicators in place, and that we will monitor over time to make sure that there's uptake in terms of the services that we digitize, as well as the outputs in terms of the services that we place on the platform. So it's going to be an ongoing type process as well. Thanks.
And as a further follow-up to that, when you say monitoring, I'm thinking about in a ministry, like the Ministry of Tourism and Ministry of Transport and Works outlined a whole set of things they're doing. Would they have access to technology that allows them to see how far a unit has progressed on a particular project, so that the head of that unit, the PS of that ministry, the minister can keep monitoring and following the performance so that we can get the results? Because we have a large, ambitious program as a government, and I believe that being able, that technology can help us in getting there.
All right, 2 points. In terms of the monitoring and evaluation, there is a particular application that we will shortly launch at the Immigration Department, which deals with delivery of services to the public. With this app, you'll get real-time responses in terms of the way the service has been delivered. And that management could immediately respond to whatever challenges the organization faced at that time. So we have an app that will be in place, as well as we'll have monitoring evaluation as part of the whole modernization program based on particular performance indices.
Last question has to do with, it was a shock to me to come into government and see how much paper comes through the door on a daily basis. And that was shocking. And so I'm very, very pleased with the work you've done so far in relation to the e-cabinet and so on to help us shift away from paper. Just as a matter of curiosity, I don't know if you know, but if we are able to successfully implement technology to help us get away from the paper we're doing, do you have any idea of how much money we would be saving as a government? Just out of curiosity, if you have an idea of what we spend and therefore can save.
We have not yet quantified that, and so I don't have a statistic for you at this point in time, but I do want to revert to an earlier question you asked about human resources. As part of the Inter-American Development Bank funded program for modernization and digitization, component 2 deals with enhancing the human resource management in the public sector. And it looks not only at workforce planning, it also looks at skills for performance management. It looks at supporting the design of a medium and long-term HR transformation strategy for the public sector and training for public sector employees in disruptive technologies, and of course supporting the enhancement of government's competencies framework for the public sector. So there's not only going to be looking at the processes, it will be looking at performance, and it will be looking at how do we truly see the value of our investment in our human resources at all levels. And so therefore that is going to be part of the modernization and digitization process.
Thank you. We have time for one last questioner, and the floor is St. Michael South Central.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question relates to subprogram 7157, which we've all been discussing at length. Under General Management and Coordination Services, the IDB-funded program provides for the electronic document records management system, as well as the digitization of records and the implementation of an e-services platform. I will try to be quick. I have two related questions. One I will pose as a follow-up. When the member for St. Michael South asked about professional services, and he was followed very closely by the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, who, despite what he would want us to think, is never really too far away from us on this side. But when the member asked about professional services and your PS, Mr. Brown, talked about this modernization project, I was hoping that you would have spoken about the tremendous scope in this project to re-engage people who have been separated from the public service, and to use their skills within this project. Now, we have said as a government that we cannot, unfortunately, protect every job, but we're going to protect every Barbadian and their right and opportunity to work. I will tell you that in St. Michael South Central, we have certainly been advocating this. When we have our constituency clinics every Wednesday, a lot of those people who come to me with their CVs, I got just two more of them today. We have established a skills bank in the constituency because we are encouraging people who have the requisite skills to present themselves to be able to access opportunities within this project. So my question to you is, what are the approaches and the strategies you're using to be able to engage people, not just to come as individuals, but to be able to organize themselves and establish companies so that some of these resources that are earmarked for professional services do not in fact leave the country, but stay here and provide opportunities for regular Barbadians?
Thank you, Minister, for that question. The digitization process has many different stages and steps, and it is the intention to use persons who have been dislocated or displaced by recent restructuring There are several steps. There's the cleaning of records that has to happen. There's the inventory of records. You have to do inventories of those records. And there is then the actual digitization of the records. So before we get to the point of digitizing, we have other steps that precede. And our intention is to use displaced workers in all of those different areas. You mentioned that this project is being funded by the Inter-American Development Bank, and as I think we all know, whenever you have a partner, you have to make sure that the approaches we take to procuring these services are indeed supporting Barbados's objectives, first of all, of being able to utilize those displaced workers, but also that it is meeting the procurement rules of the funding agency so that we can make sure that we are achieving what we need to achieve, but within rules that will make sense for the funder as well. Conversations have been ongoing with them, and we are able to see a way in which we can make this work together. And I believe with regards to certainly the cleaning of records, which is one of the steps before we get to digitization, you should be seeing some engagement of those workers in the next couple months.
And just a quick follow-up, if you'll allow me, Madam Chair, related to the e-services platform under subprogram 7157 and the delivery of services to the public. You spoke earlier, Minister, about the tremendous waste that we saw with the digital ID cards that were procured by the last administration some time ago. I also want to make reference as background to my question on the e-services to the electronic single window project for which the government of Barbados is still repaying $5 million US. Now, this project was launched on Valentine's Day in 2017 and didn't work then and does not work now. In fact, I just tried to reach the site and it said this site can't be reached. I suppose that is like certain members of the last administration. But what I want to ask is, given that this ESW was seen as one of the electronic platforms for growth, and there are those who would want to suggest that this Barbados Labour Party administration does not have a plan for growth, not realizing that not everything has to be about tax and spend, but can also be about facilitation and regulation, and that's certainly a part of our platform. But what are the plans, what are the parts of those services, what are the services that you believe by making them available online? One of the services that we earmarked, for example, was town planning and being able to make applications online. What are the other services that you believe will be able to form that platform for growth by making it easier to do business and making and cutting down the time that it takes for business to be done so that this country can become more competitive?
Thank you, Minister, for the question. In relation to the electronic single window, we are working, the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Smart Technology is working closely with the Ministry of Commerce, because that project falls under that ministry, to iron out the technical challenges with respect to the full implementation of that application. There are challenges in relation to the communication between the single window and the Asecuta system used by the Customs Department. And that has been a long-standing issue, and we met just a couple of weeks ago to see how we can address the technical challenges to update the tariff codes, because we believe that's a critical part in terms of facilitation of trade and business, and that if we got that right, the potential to improve Barbados's ranking in the ease of doing business is tremendous. In relation to town planning department, we are also working with them. We work collaboratively in relation to the IT components for most ministries, and this is no exception. The Town Planning Department has been identified as one of the top priority agencies, again, because of the service that they provide in terms of facilitation of business, construction, permits, and so on. And that is a priority. That is also being funded under the IDB Public Sector Modernization Program. We hope that we're able to launch that application within the next 2 to 3 months, which would facilitate the submission of applications electronically and the processing of applications, which would speed up the approval process. There are other services which have been prioritized, and perhaps the Permanent Secretary can speak to some of the other agencies that have been identified as priorities by the government.
All right, let me go through the list of services that will be part of the first phase of the modernization program. The first one is the Police Certificate of Character. Liquor licensing, that's the second one. The Immigration Department, which is applications for passports. International Business and CAIPO, business registration. The Licensing Authority, dealing with renewal of driver's licensing, as well as the Registration Department, which is birth and death certificates, as well as child maintenance. Those are the services that we are targeting in the first phase.
Thank you, honourable members. We have reached the end of the question and answer session. I will now ask the Senator if she has any closing remarks. 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd like to thank all honourable members for your engagement in this exercise. I'd also like to thank the team of the ministry who is here to support, and there are some who are here in the well of the House. However, there are others who are sitting behind us, like Dr. Babb, who is an advisor to the ministry, as well as Paula Lane Williams, who is an assistant accountant. They have all done tremendous work, working long days and late nights with us in terms of trying to put these estimates together and set the priorities. And so I want to thank all of them for their support. Just saying that transformation is a collaboration across government, because transformation must happen everywhere, and it basically takes all of us to do it. That is the private sector, the public sector, all of us in this room, and just all of Barbadians, young and old, every race and creed. And so I wish to thank you for the opportunity to present today, and we look forward to Barbados going digital and for all of us being on board.
Thank you so much.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Head 31 in the tune of $9,895,131 stand part.
Question is that Head 31 in the sum of $9,895,131 stand part. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. Honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Move that you do now report progress to His Honour the Speaker and ask to leave to sit again.
Question is that I do now report to the Honourable Speaker progress and ask him for leave to sit again. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman has reported progress and has humbly asked for leave to sit again.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the House be suspended until 10 minutes after 5 this afternoon.
The question is that this honorable chairman be suspended until 10 minutes after 5 in the PM. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it. This honorable chairman is so suspended.